بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد سيد الأولين والآخرين، وحبيب رب العالمين، وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا، إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا، وانفعنا بما تعلمنا، وزدنا من فضلك علما وتعليما، إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم افتح علينا بحكمتك، وانشر علينا برحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. I pray you're all well, inshallah ta'ala. Welcome to Homeopathic Psychology. Welcome to the Hikmah Academy. Welcome to this level 2 course of what we are broadly calling the foundations of homeopathy, inshallah ta'ala. And really as part of our commitment to making hikmah accessible and available to our communities moving forward. This has been completely, a vision of and labor, let's say, of love, of mission, of a deep yearning to serve in this capacity. And so to me, it's very exciting to be able to, again, be with you all. Many of you are regular students, as we were just saying hello to many of you. Many of you are familiar to this space and familiar with this type of teaching. And we're happy to have you all here. And for those of you to come, inshallah ta'ala, we're happy to have you here as well, and all are welcome. And those of you just for today following on Instagram, you are most welcome as well. Now, what we wanted to do is just kind of give a little bit of a soft landing into the course and into an orientation into what this course is really about and why it's important. So I welcome you first and foremost to the Hikmah Academy, wherein our mission is to revive and make available to mankind the timeless teachings of the holistic, vitalistic tradition of Hikmah medicine. This is why we're here. This is why we're doing all of this. And may Allah accept it, inshaAllah ta'ala, and make it beneficial and make it a fecundating objective and process, inshaAllah ta'ala. This is a little bit about me. You can read this later. You have your slides, inshaAllah ta'ala. What I do want to start with is intention. You've maybe seen this slide before. Some of you who have taken my courses, I like to start with this intention of the great Imam Sahel ibn Abdullah at-Tustari, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, one of the great people, the men of Allah, the Rijal of Allah ta'ala. And he says, Allah is the Qibla of the intention. Allah is the Qibla of our niyyah. Our niyyah is directed to Allah. And then working backwards, he says, and the intention is the Qibla of the heart. The Qibla, we direct it towards niyyah. And the heart is the Qibla of the body. So the body, al-badan, we direct towards the qalb. And the badan is the Qibla of the jawarih, the limbs. As the badan is the part of us, it's like our torso. And the jawarih are the limbs. So the limbs, the Qibla of the limbs is the medial, the center axis of our being, the badan. And finally, the limbs are the Qibla of what? The dunya. Subhanallah. The dunya is chasing you. Why are we chasing it? May Allah allow us to flow with reality that we are just chasing Allah. We're chasing our sound intentions, inshallah ta'ala. We're chasing reality. So may Allah make us people of intention, inshallah ta'ala. And I want to encourage all of you right now just to take a moment to make an intention for yourself in this course. Why are you here? Why are you here? It's a Saturday morning. Some of you have just finished the other course that we did. We did the Remembering the Heart course for the whole summer, basically. And now you're back in class with us. And we're here in the beginning of a journey together. Why are you here? And what do you want to get out of this for yourself? What are you looking for? What are you yearning for? Ameen, Rabbil Alameen. And I encourage us to, all of us, myself first and foremost, and all of you, to continue to come back into a threading through this intention and a clarifying further of the intention and a maturing and even evolving of the intention, inshallah ta'ala. Why am I here? And what will I do with this knowledge? Because this is knowledge. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam teaches us al-hikmatu dalatul mu'min, that wisdom is the lost property of the believer. Are you a believer? You're a believer. I'm a believer. Wisdom is your lost property, he says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wherever he or she finds it, wherever they find it, they have more right to it. It's yours. So may we, inshallah ta'ala, be able to find the wisdom that is scattered in creation, in the natural world, and be able to have a model that can extract that wisdom and put it together in a beautiful way and make it nafi'. Put it in its proper place. This is what some of the ulama say, that wisdom is really practically, that wisdom is putting things in their proper place, having adab with the creation. This is the wisdom. Having etiquette, having adab, a healthy relationship with reality. Naam. So let's make the intention, inshallah ta'ala, as well as what we've already made intentions for, to seek wisdom. Ya Rab. Mine it, extract it, purify it, and use it in the alchemical process, inshallah ta'ala, of turning this base nafs into the luminous golden heart and ruh that it is, really. Ameen Rabbil Alameen. Now, some announcements, inshallah ta'ala, before we begin. We have the following as the current schedule of lectures. It's going to be a little bit choppy as next week I will be traveling. But after that, we should be on a smooth sail until the end of the year. Okay, so we're going to intro today. Maybe that's actually a good idea. I was thinking about it this morning. It's actually, I think, a good thing that you have a couple weeks to really marinate. And I'll send you some more resources as well, but really marinate in what homeopathic psychology is, because it's a little bit different, as we were saying earlier. It's a really different world. It's not like other psychological models or clinical approaches. It's not like medicine. It's not even like other types of herbalism. It's really its own system. It's very unique. And I hope today you really get it, if you don't get it already, of how unique it is. So we'll do lecture 1 today. We'll break for next week, and then we'll come back, inshallah ta'ala, 1st of November, and cruise control till the end of the year. Bi'iznillahi ta'ala. Now, in terms of the actual schedule of lectures, the content wise, this is the new schema of the course. Okay. At the beginning, I was planning on doing 10 types, but I realized if we did that, we wouldn't finish the course for the book that we want to teach for many years. And I don't think that's wise. I think it's better that we try to do as many as we can. And even if it's more of a broad stroke, I think we'll have enough time to go moderately deep. Like you will get a sense of the Constitution. I promise, inshallah ta'ala. But this way, if we do it this way, as you see, we're going to cover two constitutions a day for 9 weeks, starting in 2 weeks. We'll cover 18 constitutions. There's 35 in the book. So what we will cover half the constitutions. So we set up for a level 3, part 2 of this course, finishing up the rest, and you have covered 35 of the core constitutions. The polycrest, what we call the polycrest, the most commonly used 80-90% yield in any homeopathic psychology practice, right? High yield knowledge. So we can't do it all in one course. That is impossible. There's no way to finish the book in 10 weeks or 12 weeks. No way. But if we do it, we can do it in 2, inshallah ta'ala. So you were signed up for 10, you're gonna get 18, inshallah, constitutions. Okay. So want to be um excited about that, inshallah ta'ala. I think that's a good pivot. I think that's a good shift. I felt really good about that when I decided that. And I hope you're happy about that too, that you will get more in this course than you initially signed up for. Okay. This, of course, is the book. I really encourage people to have the book if you can order it. I was looking this morning for the PDF. I wasn't successful. I found a Word document, which is not like the whole book's in a Word document. Um, don't really like that kind of format. I'll keep looking. If you happen to find it, please send it to me. I'll put it on the portal. But I just would encourage you, if otherwise, just to get the book. It's a wonderful book. You will enjoy reading it. He does a really good job outlining and sketching out um, the type, the temperament, the psychological personality, the subjective kind of features of each constitution. And it's really kind of the basis of this course, right? I'll be weaving in other things as well as my own experience. That's really where homeopathy shines, as people's experience, right? And just being able to meet these people and have, these encounters with them as you see them in their constitutions, and be able to glean insight from that, right? Experiential insight. But this is the book, inshallah ta'ala. It's a wonderful book. I encourage everyone to pick it up. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So what is homeopathy? Homeopathy is a system of healing, of holistic healing, that uses energetic remedies from various sources to help harmonize one's inner constitution. That's a very top-down definition. Okay, you see here the pictures. You have plants, you have an animal, you have a plant, you have an animal, and you have a mineral. And these reflect the 3 kingdoms, the 3 basic kingdoms from which remedies can be sourced, right? So basically anything in nature, even poisons, even, we can talk about this later, um, matter from pathological tissue in the body can be made into a remedy. That's a little bit later. We'll talk about that. That's called a nosode. But basically, the majority of the remedies are found either in the animal, plant, or mineral kingdoms, and they're prepared in a specific way to be used in a homeopathic format, which we'll talk about. Samuel Hahnemann says, and the Organon, the founder of homeopathy, he says the highest ideal of cure, is the rapid, gentle, and permanent restoration of health. It's about restoring vitality. We want people to we want to bring people back into alignment with their original state of being, which is the fitra, right? Even if you haven't been well for a long time, you were born in fitra. That is your identity. That is your reality. And so the highest ideal of cure, this is an ideal, but it's a true ideal. It's a true principle. We want to be able to come back to something of an original nature, an original balance, in a rapid, gentle, and permanent manner. So homeopathy is this approach of healing through resonance rather than resistance. As we're talking about energetic medicine, we're talking about energetic healing. Not that we're dealing with the woo-woo in the sense that we're not dealing with the actual body, the actual psyche, the actual state of affair of the organism. No, we're dealing with reality. And part of reality is understanding that behind the chemistry and behind even the consciousness at some level, there is a energy matrix. There is a energetic reality behind all of it, right? We talk about this in terms of the life force, the vital force. Has anyone heard this word before? Life force, vital force, one's chi, one's ki, one's prana, the orgone energy, the innate intelligence, elan vital. These are all words that are used, right? Physis, Old Greek word, physis. These are all terms that are triangulating, approximating around this reality. In our tradition, the Hakims and the ulama have called it الروح الحيواني. الروح الحيواني, the animal or animating spirit. The animal or animating, الحيواني. Yes, the animal is animated. There's something of, there's a movement. It's alive in a way that plants aren't alive, right? So there's something of a movement, but also we have plant energy, plant life inside of us. We have a mineral reality. We have minerals all over our bodies, right? Constructing the scaffolding of the musculoskeletal system and much of the neuronal and much of the metabolic physiological functions are governed by minerals, salts. So we have these kingdoms inside of us as well. And this is why, even in this old teaching, right, it's not necessarily a Islamic only teaching. This is a teaching from reality, even before Islam. But even the earliest of people and knowers and saints and scholars of our tradition validated this. Like, for example, in the poetry of Imam Ali, that the human being is a microcosm, right? You consider yourself to be this insignificant thing. And within you is unfolded the whole world. تحسب نفسك أنك جرم صغير وفيك انطواء العالم الأكبر. Right? It's amazing that Imam Ali, Karamallahu wajha, was talking like that. But also, why wouldn't he? He's the door of the city of knowledge. So why wouldn't he talk like that? These are realities, right? So we contain animal and plant and mineral realities. And behind it is this energy matrix. And that is what ultimately homeopathy is interested in working with. And working with the body and the life force rather than against it. Because many interventions in modern day medicine and psychology is looking at trying to taper, to quell, to suppress, to treat, to manage, to alter and modify from a superficial level down our symptoms, as opposed to harmonizing the inner reality, the most inner reality that has become imbalanced. And that because of that imbalance is causing all these symptoms in the body and in the psyche. You see, it's a whole different approach. This is why even herbalism, which is fantastic. Do I use herbs? I love herbs. I use herbs. I have tinctures. If you can see my desk and my uh, shelving over there, it's all full of tinctures and herbs and stuff. I love tinctures. But is it homeopathy? No. And do I use it like homeopathy? Is it on the same level of homeopathy? No way. Right? And you can read Matthew Wood, who's a really great herbalist, and he's prolific. He's written multiple works on herbalism, Western herbalism, and he understands this too. And oftentimes he gives homeopathic indications of these herbs in his books of herbalism. He says, in herbalism, I would use this way, but homeopathically, it's used for something totally different. And at times he'll say, I prefer its application in homeopathy. Yeah. But homeopathy is interested, I mean, really fundamentally, it's so important that we're not against resisting or treating symptoms. It's about resonating with and harmonizing and bringing balance to the inner constitution, the inner being, the energetic constitution, the part of us that's deeper than our body and even our mind. There's a deeper reality. That is what homeopathy fundamentally is working with. So the essence of homeopathy, what is homeopathy? Really kind of, again, orienting to this really interesting, novel, new way of looking at things. Homeopathy is about 200 years old, founded by Dr. Samuel Hahnemann in the late 18th century. Very interesting story. He was a pharmacist in Germany when he started his journey. And he started to practice. A lot of pharmacists back then would naturally just kind of train with physicians and become physicians and start practicing. But he was horrified at the time of at his time when they were practicing what later people would call heroic medicine. A lot of mercury and calomel and heroin and surgery and leeches and lots of bloodletting. Not hijama in the way, just like a lot of bloodletting. They were working with the humors, but they didn't have hikmah. They lost their way. So they were trying to bleed and trying to poison and kill the pathology and kill the body. The body, of course, was also in some way evil because this is a post-Christian kind of perspective that they were coming from. And so it was very gruesome. And they called it in some way heroic medicine because you had to be a hero to survive it. Because it was just really gruesome. And it got to a point where he didn't want to practice or be involved in that in any way. And he became totally disenchanted by it. And he said, I can't sleep at night. If I was to practice like this, I wouldn't sleep at night. So he decided, I'm gonna just translate medical texts. I'm gonna just He was a polyglot. He spoke multiple languages. So he would translate from Greek, translate from German, translate from English, translate from Latin, and he spoke Arabic. So he translated the Qanun, for example, the Qanun of Ibn Sina, he would translate it. And of course, it was a constant text. It was a mainstay in European medical training. For 600 years, they taught the Qanun of Ibn Sina, the canon of Ibn Sina in Europe. So he translated that. And then actually, if you find one of his books is called Chronic Diseases. And if you look in one of the monographs of Aurum Metallicum, which we'll cover later in this course, uh, gold, right? His monograph on the substance of gold, the essence of gold. He actually quotes Ibn Sina and he cites in Arabic. He puts in the footnote the actual Arabic text. Fascinating, right? Because Ibn Sina used Aurum Metallicum for what? He used gold preparations for what? He used it for depression, very severe depression. Like he'd make a specific. He wasn't giving people bars of gold. I mean, that could maybe lift my depression, maybe your depression. But he was preparing, a tincture, preparing some sort of um uh salve. Actually, what Ibn Sina would do actually is he'd take powdered gold and he'd crush it in a mortar and pestle with rose, which also rose, if you know Bach flower remedies, which are a branch of homeopathy. We'll talk about them later, inshallah ta'ala. They're really interesting. Rose also is used for depression. Rose kind of brightens the heart energy. So you'd put gold and rose together to lift depression. Now, in homeopathy, what is the indication? What is the constitution? What is the picture of aura metallicum? Suicidal depression. It's one of the, it's like the remedy. There's many of them, but it's like the king of a certain form of suicidal depression. Right? But he proved it homeopathically. So he wrote Ibn Sina's little blurb about that in his chronic diseases. And this is fascinating. So Hahnemann was a genius, right? And we can talk about him all day. But basically, he uncovered the principles of homeopathy. He created a paradigm that worked along the principle of like cures like, which we'll get to in a second, the law of similars. But he based his energetic and dynamic understanding of health at the center of homeopathy. That fundamentally we have to deal with the energy body, right? And we're not bypassing lifestyle. So in his Organon, he talks about, look, if you're not sleeping well, there's no remedy. I can't make up for that with a remedy. You got to sleep well. If you're not getting enough nutrition, you got to eat properly, right? You got to make sure that you're eating according to your temperament, your constitution, eating sufficiently, not eating too much, not too little, eating at the right times, so on and so forth. Yeah. So we're not saying homeopathy is all you have to do is tune the energy body and do nothing else. No, you still have to eat, you still have to sleep, you have to work, you have to avoid poisons and toxins. But homeopathy can help restore and optimize function so that your liver and your kidneys, for example, are able to detoxify the body. But you also have to just be aware that you can't just do whatever you want and just, again, support the organism. There is a threshold. So we nestle homeopathy in the Hekma paradigm in a specific manner, honoring lifestyle, honoring these other pillars of health, and putting it in its proper place, and also understanding there's a place for herbs and a place for body work and a place for counseling and a place for pharmaceuticals and a place for surgery. So it's all being put together here, right? But at a very deep and fundamental level, homeopathy covers a lot of ground and is perhaps, to me, the most elegant of them all in terms of modalities. Also, what Hahnemann emphasizes is that illness, as we've been saying, is a disturbance of the vital force, not merely physical or mental pathology. So it's the distunement of the vital force that's the problem, not the germ, not the toxin itself. The toxin has had an effect on the vital force. And you may still be having a chemical reaction to the toxin, but effectively, if you want to deeply heal and deeply heal in a way that restores vitality, you have to address the mistuned, detuned, disharmonized vital force. And that healing through the appropriate remedy occurs through stimulating the body's own wisdom. That we tap into the deeper energy body and heal that, and then from there, affecting the mind and affecting the body towards health. I know this is a lot. I'm trying to break this down as easily as possible, and it's a task for me, okay? But inshallah ta'ala, take your time. There's no pressure. I know these things are, they can be, when they're new, they're like really overwhelming. And I'm hoping to have a lot of time later for discussion, Q&A, and unpacking of these things, okay? But stay with me. Stay with me. It's going to get more and more clear. Homeopathy also, you can say, is a psychology of the whole person. Right? The key idea here is that homeopathy sees the mind and the body as an expression of the vital force. There's like a indwelling spirit, the life force, and then it kind of surges out, it kind of flows out into the mind and the body. And so the symptoms that we see when we're unwell are the language of that soul, of that vital force, seeking balance, right? The symptoms are in some way a effect of something external. You did something wrong, or something was done to you, and the vital force is trying to make up for it, come back to balance. It's not able to come back into balance, and so it produces symptoms in the attempt, right? The intelligence of this deeper intelligence of our life force is always trying to find balance, right? It's not this passive thing. It's always trying to do that. And even symptoms are in some way a reflection of of a attempt to come back to balance, but not being able to. And so for the one who has the keen eye, symptoms of an individual become kind of a language that that person's life force is speaking to you, if you can understand it, and you can understand who the person is, where they're at, and what they need. Homeopathic psychology gives language and a working model on how trauma, we're talking about psychology here, we can't not talk about trauma. It gives language on how trauma ruptures the self. We talked about this in our Remembering the Heart course, how when we are born in fitra, we're born in the heart, we're born embodied. And then we have traumatic experiences that happen to us. It's a fact of life. We get tested in the dunya. You can't escape it. It's impossible. You can't avoid challenge and difficulties and the like, you know. It's a fact of life. Trauma is a fact of life. But we understand also that when trauma affects us, that there is a type of fragmenting from the heart, from the body, and a movement into what we call the nafs, into the ego, the false self. And in some way, it's a defense, in some way, it's a gift. And we all do this, right? And this is what we talked about and remembering the heart. Now, here in homeopathy, we'll say also that there's a type of energetic imbalance in the vital force. We can add another layer here. That in trauma, there's this movement from heart to nafs, as well as this creation of an energetic imbalance in the vital force, which then leads to and supports the formation of the nafs, the formation of our temperament, our psychological personality, our survival strategies, our distortions, our cognitive distortions, our beliefs, right? All of that, our neurotic patterns, our addictions, our physical symptoms, all of that, right? So in the movement from the heart to the ego, to the nafs, the qalb to the nafs, there's also this energetic disharmony, imbalance that forms and then leads to the creation of these different distortions of the psyche and the body. There's an energetic aspect, is what I'm saying here. I want you to think energy as well. Not just a spiritual ego is formed. There's also this energetic component to it, a subtle energy. Yes. So we're talking about constitutions, right? The formation of the nafs in some way is a formation of a constitution. It's one's nature. It is the archetype that one slips into because of the trauma and the drama of life and makes up one's qualities, one's tendencies, one's subjectivities, and one's personality. In constitutional homeopathy, it is classically understood that we are born with this inner nature, that you're born in your constitution. But in hikmah, And what I would understand, really, what this is maybe my understanding, we'll say, instead of saying in hikmah, we understand something a bit more nuanced because we know that we're born in fitrah. We're born in fitrah. We're not necessarily born in a disharmonious or traumatized state. But from there, through the traumas of life and the ebbs and flows of destiny, there are certain changes and modifications that happen in the interior that consist and lead to the formation of one's ego and the creation of this energetic layer of pathology and imbalance. So it's not, so you are not necessarily, I say all this to say, I don't want you to be attached to your constitution. People say, oh, I'm Oram, I'm Lycopodium. You'll know all this means in a few weeks. By the end of the course, you'll know all this means. I'm a Natmer, I'm a Calcarb, I'm Pulsatilla, I'm Nux Vomica, I'm Sulfur. No, you're not. You are and you're not. We have to have this really um, subtle and nuanced relationship with these types of things. Because if you say I am, I mean, I don't think we know who we are. Who we are is a very high reality. I mean, people talk about the secret of your existence, the secret of your reality. I mean, how deep do you want to go? If you want to keep it really conventional and limited, fine. Yeah, it's your constitution. But I mean, take that with a grain of salt. Yeah. That's not absolute. Maybe in normal conversation, you can say, yeah, I'm a sulfur, I'm a sepia, I'm this, I'm that. But in reality, you can't get too attached to it. You yourself cannot get too attached to it because it's not really who you are. I want that to be very clear. And that's why I bring in the fitrah here, that you're not born necessarily in these states. But there's something maktub. There's something written on the Lawh al-Mahfuz. It was decreed for you before the creation of the world. And so invariably it's connected to your story and your essence. But you also transcend it. And I want you to be able to hold that together. But it is in this energetic imbalance, this constitution, this formation of the ego structure, that we then apply homeopathic psychology to match, according to the law of similars, the state of the constitution with a particular remedy that can bring that constitution back into balance, right? Because for every constitution, there is a remedy, there is a substance in nature that when they're brought together, the vital force is able to move and restore balance again. And typically, it's a one-to-one relationship. You have to bring the exact relationship, the exact mirror image of the state of the Constitution in its totality with the essence of a remedy that is a mirror, that is the same or similar to it. Now, what is the law of similar? Keep doing that. The law of similars is very important. This is one of the core principles of homeopathy. The core principle is similia similibus curantur. Basically, like cures like. And this is where I really want you to lock in with me for a second, because this is very different than other types of the way we think about treating symptoms and treating pathology. A substance that can cause a pattern of symptoms or keynotes in a healthy person can cure that same pattern in illness. Let's say it again slowly. A substance that can cause a pattern of symptoms, of features, of keynotes in a healthy person, when given to a healthy person, can cure that same pattern in another person who presents with them an illness. So, for example, in a Nux vomica state. The Nux vomica state is one that consists of irritability. Let's say also there's burnout. There is a lot of collapse due to overstimulation. Okay, the person will fiend for coffee and Red Bulls and Celsius and high intensity foods, meat and spicy and jalapenos and intense foods until they're totally collapsed from overdoing it and working 100 hours a week and driving really fast on the highways and just very fast and very choleric, we'll say. The Nux vomica is very choleric. Choleric sanguine, sanguine choleric, kind of in that axis. We'll talk about each of the temperaments according to their temperament as well to kind of give you a better idea. So the Nux vomica is a sanguine, choleric, choleric, sanguine. They can be either one. Just kind of think of it in that world. So if someone comes into my office, for example, so that's Nux vomica, yeah? Someone comes into my office who is a surgeon, he's an ER surgeon, high functioning, right? And he's on call or she's on call on the weekends. And they work 6, 7 days a week. They sleep at the hospital, very intense. Maybe they work in a city. There's gunshot wounds, there's car accidents, there's all sorts of super intense, super acute. They're triaging patients. There's 80 people outside. There's only one or two of them because the hospital's understaffed, and they're just doing that day in and day out. They're thin, they're sinewy, they talk fast, they're intense, they're commanding, but they don't rest. They don't eat properly. Their main diet, perhaps even as a surgeon, may be um, Red Bulls and cigarettes. Okay. And they comes in totally exhausted, totally depleted, has gastric issues, has recurring um, sinus infections or upper respiratory infections, and is just depleted, right? Now, how do I know what Nux vomica is good for? We do provings. We do provings. This is how we know what every substance that we use as a substance for a constitutional remedy is used for. We do a proving. So Nux vomica, when you give it to a healthy person, you give it to 1,000 healthy people to prove that substance. All of them say, I started driving more fast, so I started getting more irritable. I started really liking spicy food. I've been really caffeinating way more than usual. Right? So these are like healthy people, 1,000 people that don't know what they're taking. It's blind. They start taking Nux vomica every day for a month and they start reporting, I'm irritable. I'm like driving more recklessly. I really like meat and spicy foods all of a sudden. I'm caffeinating and I'm really tired in the morning. I'm not resting. I'm staying up late at night. A lot of night revelry, a lot of staying up and doing work at 1 in the morning. I'm being productive and whatever. What's happening here? So all that is happening, right? That's called the proving. That's what Nux vomica is good for. So now someone comes in and says, I do this for a living. I drink caffeine and smoke tobacco and I race my car at 1 in the morning after my hospital shift for a living. Been doing it for 6 years. I am exhausted. Now, what's the remedy? Nux vomica. You see, they're Nux vomica. So I match the remedy that causes those specific features in a healthy person in the situation where the imbalanced person, the unhealthy person, is presenting with those same symptoms. Like cures like. Does that make sense? Let it sit. It's a whole different way of looking at it, right? Before, you'd be like, oh, okay, you're depleted. Let's do this. Get you sleeping, which obviously he needs to sleep too. But like, get you sleeping, get you on um ADHD medications. You're too you need Ritalin, you need Adderall, you need to calm down, you need to slow down, you need to slow you down. and you need to rest and you need to do this and you need to do that. We're thinking in terms of opposites. In homeopathy, maybe you'd recommend some yin yoga, more water. All that stuff would be great, right? Or maybe, in herbalism, you think a little bit differently too. You think, oh, you probably have adrenal fatigue. Let me give you some herbs that increase the function of your adrenal glands so that you can produce more cortisol and adrenaline so you can keep it all going, right? So you're instead of getting someone in a place of replenishment, maybe we're actually we're giving them a green light to keep pushing harder, right? Sometimes herbs are used like that. No, we don't want to use it like that. I want to match, according to the law of similars, the state of this person with a remedy that causes those same states and symptoms in healthy people so that I can communicate with the vital force and kind of support it, nudge it along in its seeking of balance and equilibrium. That's what we want, you see. So it's like a mirror that reflects what's before it. The remedy mirrors the patient's state, allowing the vital force to be influenced by the remedy, to move and release its stagnation, the imbalance, the pathology. Yes? Let me see what's happening here because this here is not working very well. And we have some people interested about this here. So regarding homeopathic remedies, the homeopathic remedy is information, energetic information. It's not material, it's not matter. And it works on the vital force and ultimately the soma and the psyche through resonance. And, in some way, I like to think of it like the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. The believer is a mirror of the believer. The remedy itself also becomes a mirror for the state of pathology of that individual. That the substance, right, the nux vomica, it's, a type of nut, right, that becomes a mirror for the person in the nut state. Or sulfur, sulfur becomes a mirror for someone in the sulfur state. Or the pulsatilla is someone, which is a windflower. It's a mountain windflower, becomes a mirror and a guide for someone in the pulsatilla state. Or ignatia, which is something that we use in terms of in grief, right? So ignatia, when people take ignatia and they prove ignatia, people feel overwhelming grief and moodiness. They'll move from anger to grief and sadness and weepiness and back to anger and rigidity in like 5 minutes. And they're not children, these are grown adults, right? There's a type of moodiness from grief that can happen. It's profound. And so, how do we know what ignatia does? People have those states when they're healthy, when they take ignatia. So, if someone comes in and they just lost their best friend or their lover, their spouse, or their parent, Allah forbid us, those types of experiences, even though they're facts of life, of course. Allah be gentle with us. And that person moves into a state of acute grief, then what becomes the need? To move that grief. You can't get rid of that grief. Grief is not pathology, it's energy that can be maybe welled up and stagnant, but you can give ignatia for that person and they will help move the grief and help them begin to assimilate and process and sense make that energy into what's next for it. Maybe sabr, maybe shukr, At least with Allah, contentment with Allah Ta'ala's decree. So let me see here. So this here, I know this is really interesting. There's some people here on Instagram, but my thing is not working. No, actually, no, it's working. Okay, I was about to turn this off just now, but I think I'll just keep it. Okay. Okay, we're gonna keep it for now because I was holding it, my arm was getting tired. But it can be there for now. So what is a constitutional type? Again, kind of I'm weaving these things back and forth. So we keep getting it, inshallah ta'ala. It is the overall pattern of mind, body, spirit expression, unique to an individual. There's a specific pattern, like a constellation of mind, body, and spiritual features that we all have. Okay? And there's a specific constellation or picture, or some people say the word song here. There's a specific song that you have. You have an inner song, an inner melody, an inner rhythm that's very unique. And it expresses itself in the mind, body, and spirit in a very unique way as a totality, as a whole. That's a constitution. So when we think of the four elements, right, in some way that's a type of constitutional psychology. You have the fire type. The fire type is a specific type that expresses itself in the mind, body, and spirit of those types of people in a very unique way. You can see the fire essence coursing through them. And the water people, right? The phlegmatic people. There's a specific essence of water that you can see coursing through the features of their mind, body, and spirits as well. There's a reality to that. So those are four, right? Earth, fire, water, air, spring, summer, fall, winter. And constitutional homeopathy, in the book here, we have 35. There's more than 35, but those are 35 core types, you see? So these are all even more particular songs, more particular constellational pictures that we can really, if we get a handle on, you begin to see them everywhere, you know? And I know some of you, and I don't know some of you, but I can see you here, and I can just begin to slowly begin to understand, you know? It's like some of you I know a little bit more deeply, and maybe I've prescribed things to you, but others of you, you know, like maybe I'm seeing you for the first time, but just from how you look, just from what I can see, there's certain features that jump out at me. So there's a type of even physiognomy, right? A type of firasa even that you can begin to apprehend when you have this knowledge, right? Now, firasa is of two types, right? Firasa or physiognomy is the study of the face and study of the habitus, the body type, right? And you can begin to actually see people and read and understand them. And Chinese medicine has this too. They have a whole system of understanding who you are depending on, you know, your face and, you know, your colors and the specific features. Like if you have a widow's peak, like I have a widow's peak, that says something about me. You know, people that have this here, it's like this little, and I think in Chinese medicine it's called like the brow sword or something like that. It's like a little, it's like, but like mine isn't really there unless I kind of pierce it. But some people, they have a really strong line between their eyebrows, right? You see them? That means something. You have crow's feet when you smile. I have those. That means something, right? And you have zones. So Chinese medicine has its own system. In homeopathy, it has its own unique system as well that is um that splays out through the temperament. So each temperament has certain features. So like some temperaments, for example, are known to be more sinewy and lean, right? Some are more corpulent, they're bigger. Some are more muscular, some are more athletic. Some are known to have more black hair, darker features. Others are more fair-skinned. But it's not absolute, right? So even then, like, for example, and this is, you have to understand um, society. So it's not like, for example, if, like, for example, Pulsatilla, let's say Pulsatilla. Pulsatilla is known to be blonde and blue-eyed. But if you go to China, there's no one's blonde and blue-eyed. Does that mean there's no Pulsatilla? I'm sure there's a lot of Pulsatilla out there, actually, right? Because they tend to have a lot more feminine types of women than a lot of people in the West nowadays. But like, what does that mean? Well, that means you have to know the society and the standards of that culture and be able to differentiate within that whole who's lighter and darker, bigger, smaller, right? You have to be able to see that. And some people that don't and can't see that, they can't really help those people properly. For example, and forgive me for the trope, but just I'm trying to use this as a teaching example for people that say, all Asians look the same, or all Scandinavians, all people from Norway and Sweden look the same, or all African people look the same. It's like, okay, you can't, now you're not going to be able to be an appropriate healer for these people, right? Because you can't differentiate the nuances. You can't see the hikmah, right? But for somebody that knows that knowledge, they can go into their culture. All they see is the differences. They can't see the similarities as much. And they see whoever said that, wherever they came from, you all look the same. Right? We all do that to each other, right? That's why you have to get to know each other. That's why the Quranic invitation to know each other, to get to know each other. So a constitutional remedy resonates with the person's core pattern. Right? That's what the remedy is looking at. It's looking at that energetic matrix behind the symptoms. We're not looking at the symptoms. We're not dosing symptoms. Now, in first aid homeopathy, you can. In first aid homeopathy, there is a level, for those of you that took the course, that like if you get a burn, yeah, there's a remedy for a burn. If you get a bee sting, there's a remedy for a bee sting. And it's high yield in first aid applications, right? So that is true, that there is something there. There's a hikmah in that. But we're talking about psychology. You don't just become your personality overnight. You've been. You've been you for a while. You're all adults. You're all at least probably 30 years old. So you've been you. So there's no such thing as treating symptoms when you've been you for 30 years. We treat the pattern. We treat the totality. And that's what constitutional or homeopathic psychology is all about. And there's layers to the Constitution. Right? There's layers to the way the vital force expresses itself through these different layers. Right? So you see, like, for example, um, white light that gets refracted through a prism, and then you see a splay of all the different colors. Right? You see Roy G. Biv that's splayed out from the white light in the prism. Each of those Roy G. Biv colors, the rainbow colors, may Allah forgive them for ruining the rainbow for us, It's like I get triggered saying the rainbow. But like, every color of the rainbow becomes like a certain level of expression of the vital force. So you have like your body habitus, like, its overall shape. And then you have your physical features. And then you have your physical tendencies. So things that like you're sensitive to cold, or you love the sun, or I don't like to be hot, right? Or I need to like I like my room to be stuffy, or I like fresh. I crave open air. I hate the AC. I mean, what? all these different features with air. These are all physical tendencies. These are all types of preferences that we have that are expressions of our unique constitution. Your metabolic type, your emotional lability and tendencies. What emotions do you tend to inhabit? Are you someone that tends to anger? Are you someone who tends to weepiness? Do you tend to anger or anxiety? Morbid fear. Are you numb? Do you block all your emotions? Right? What's the tendency? We all usually have access to a few of them, but we have a core and deep and fundamental relationship with usually one or two emotions. And if we ask people around us, they'll be able to sometimes tell us more than what we think because we think we're experiencing everything, but we don't express everything. And the expression is important. Themes, so mental themes. So again, our beliefs, fixed notions, you know, do we get obsessed about certain things? Do we have certain types of reactivity, certain triggers, right? Someone says something, boom. Like, why do we do like that? Like, why are we so reactive in that way? Certain types of spiritual orientation, some people, have like they really hold on to religion and spirituality, and there's a type of dogmatic hold of it. Others are more process oriented with it. These can be tendencies of the Constitution. We all are trying to follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and be like him and follow the guidance, but we do things differently. We all do things like the path is vast and there's many ways to God. There's many ways to God as our teacher says, as there are breaths of the human being. Every moment, every breath is a path. Every constitution is a path. Your path is your path. This is why, the kibar of the Salihin, they say, just follow your path. Know yourself. Be real with what is for you. And follow the guidance, stay within the rules of the Sharia and the parameters and be in good company and don't think of yourself very highly. Stay humble. But like your path is your path to Allah. You can't follow someone else's path and get to what they have. Yeah. So there's something about spiritual orientation that's really important here. And then the psychological dimension, again, these remedies, each constitution, it represents a trauma style, we can say, the way that we adapt to early wounds. Because again, in some way, the energetic imbalance is a result of these early external influences that cause the fragmentation from the heart to the ego and the formation of the ego and the development of a certain type of story or song or nature. So, for example, and you'll get to know these kinds of people later, natrum muriaticum, there is a type of hurt through rejection, usually a lot of disappointed love. Disappointed love. Yeah. And they, as a result, they're kind of, you know, to use a psychological term, reaction formation, is that they become really self-contained. There's a lot of rigidity, and they do for themselves, or they do for others, but they do it from a place of containment, of fear, of rejection, of like doing stuff, but like, doing it without really being there and doing it. They do things kind of out of this like fear, out of this performative kind of aspect. Like they do things from a place of, I can't be vulnerable. I'll do it behind the wall. Natrum is or natmer. There's different natrums, which we'll probably cover more in level three in the next course. There's natrum carbonicum, there's natrum sulfuricum. The main one is natrum muriaticum. And Natmer, there's a lot of walls around Natmer. And you'll feel very like they have a heavy presence. Even though if you get to know them, they can actually be very playful, very loving. And usually like when they travel, they'll usually like they'll wear black and they'll wear like very unflattering clothing. And they usually have you know those glasses? I mean, this is part of like the physiognomy and the tendencies. The glasses, you know, they'll have like the bigger frames. They won't be smaller, they'll be like really big frame glasses typically. And sometimes they have like the, you know, what's it called? It's like the Malcolm glasses, like the horn, and it has like a design on the top part of the frame. It's that kind of look. It's very unflattering kind of hairstyle. Um, they wear black, but then when they travel or they're feeling better, they'll start wearing yellows and oranges and stuff like that. Put on some jewelry. These are really Natmer is a very woman like is a very feminine remedy. It's a very feminine constitution. Men can go into it too, though. But the idea here is that there's trauma hurt through rejection, and they internalize that rejection very deeply. And a part of them goes, never, I will never be vulnerable again. I want to be loved. I want to be in relationships. So I'll be really helpful. I'll be connected to people. I'll take care of people, but I will never open my heart. And then there's this thinking like, why does no one love me? Of course, the answer is you don't open your heart. Even if they were loving you, they probably are loving you. You're not receiving it because your heart's closed. But I can't let down my wall. Well, let me dose you Natmer and then see how you do in a month. You know, that's the idea. Lachesis, fear of suppression. This person typically grows up in a household with a lot of suppression, a lot of control, top-down control, authoritarian control. Not authoritative, not healthy, guiding structure, suppressive, suffocating structure. So lachesis becomes intense, very expressive, always talking, just very loquacious. Lachesis is very loquacious. If you walk into a room with a lachesis, she or he, usually she is not going to be sitting there quietly meditating. She is talking, and she will talk your ear off. And she will weave 1,000 things because, and don't tell her not to stop. Don't tell her, well, you don't want me to, are you controlling me? Are you being a narcissist? It's like, no, but it's like, we're at a table of 10 people. You know, we're sitting at a table of 10 people, and 10 people also, the 9 other people that want to speak. And you've been speaking nonstop for 45 minutes. It's like, that's lachesis, you see? And they're very sensitive about, I need to get, they can be very sexual as well. They can have a lot of sexual energy as well. There's very intense, big energy people. But their hurt is from suppression. The wound is suppression, you see. When you see a lachesis, when I see a lachesis, I say, okay. See, like I know now, even from my trauma work, I know I know what the wound is almost. If I see the energies lachesis on the first visit, I can almost assume, I can almost guess with high likelihood of certainty that there was suppression in her childhood or, you know, in her teenage years. Someone tried to clamp her down and she reacted against that. See, this is where archetypal psychology, holistic psychology is fantastic, right? And now, in addition to doing heart work and trauma work, at the end of it, you know, I can say, okay, in addition to what we just did, please take lachesis, you know, maybe once a week or maybe once a day or whatever the script is, you know, and it will facilitate the movement of the energy body, right? So we're not just doing counseling and talking and processing emotions and feeling into our states during sessions, but even outside of sessions, there's movement happening. And that's the idea with homeopathy. In Arsenicum album, very interesting type. It'll be our first type. We'll start with Arsenicum album in 2 weeks when we begin the remedies. There's a fear of chaos. There was usually a lot of chaos around them growing up, and they yearned for stability. So they become very controlling, very melancholic and choleric. So like usually melancholic cholerics, very fastidious. Everything has to be in its right place. I can't rest. I can't like it's the women, for example. Men can also be very arsenicum, so it's not a women only ones. Natmir is primarily like 90% women. Arsenicum. I'm sorry, I can't help. I'm not even supposed to really getting into these remedies yet, but I can't help myself. But arsenicum is like male and female. Um, but typically, like the arsenicum female is like, I can't go to sleep until all the dishes are clean from the sink and the house is vacuumed and all the kids' toys are put away. I can't, I can't sleep. Or, maybe husband wants to spend time, you know, and watch a movie or be intimate or something. No, no, no. Help me clean up, help me do the dishes because I can't rest. Don't touch me. I can't rest until everything is perfect. See, that's arsenicum. See, because there's a fear of chaos. I can't wake up with chaos. I need to make sure everything's perfect as much as possible, even if I go until 1, 2 a.m. Because arsenicums typically get a lot of anxiety around 12 and 1 o'clock, meaning they're awake at that 12, 1 o'clock because they're cleaning and organizing, you see. And if they get to bed earlier, they're usually up like thinking about, oh my God, I didn't get this done. I didn't get that done. Tomorrow's gonna be horrible. Like they're very controlling, very fastidious. They're perfectionists because the fear is of chaos. But if I can control my kitchen, I can control my sink, then maybe, just maybe, I'll be okay. You see, that's the inner song. That's the inner story of arsenicum. Yes. So you can pick these people up. I mean, even within the first session of with a new patient, you can just feel the arsenicumness. I'll ask them, are you really particular about your room? It's like everything has to be perfect. Oh, okay, I know exactly what I'm gonna give you. But other arsenicums also can be lesser. And I'm sorry I'm getting into this a little bit more, but like some of them, like they'll say, no, 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 look, the house is really dirty. How can I be arsenicum? How can I be a fastidious person when look, the house is like, but look at how you're acting. Like you want it to be. Maybe because you have, a lot of things going on. You're working and you have kids and whatever. You can't, but look how like you're angry at the house. Like you're unsettled at the house. In the perfect world, could you use like everything would be perfect in a perfect world? Absolutely. Like, yeah, okay. That's also confirmatory. It's not only just the room is clean, but like even if it's not, you're anxious and upset about it. You want it. You need it to be. As opposed to sulfur, sulfur can be really kind of messy. Sulfur's like, nah, it's crazy, but it's like an organized crazy. I know where everything is. And it's true, they would know where everything is. But it's kind of it's a messy order. Arsenicums don't like that. They want order. You see. But all these three different types, they reflect a certain type of early wounding and early formation of a strategy that becomes a dominant story and narrative and life approach, you see, becomes a strategy in their lives. How to avoid more rejection, how to avoid more suppression, how to avoid chaos, you see. This is where trauma comes in. Healing begins when the pattern is recognized, when consciousness meets its own image. Here he means, by consciousness, he means like the energy matrix, the deeper consciousness. So in homeopathic psychology, in practice, what is the healer's task? The task is to deeply listen, to perceive as fully as possible, not just the story, not just, oh, how do I make this person feel better? The healer doesn't help people necessarily by just trying to make the person feel better. See, sometimes therapists and counselors get stuck in that. They're trained like that too, you know. I can't really do anything outside of just going and just trying to make you feel better and validating your experience. That's not what healing is about. Healing oftentimes comes with deep challenging. You know, you have to challenge people to overcome the ego. You don't validate the ego. You can validate, you know, that person is struggling with an ego and struggling with external factors in their lives. That's really real. And you should sympathize with people. But at some point, you start getting to the work, which is pointing things out. Like that delusion of yours, it's a heavy delusion. It's a sad delusion, but it is a delusion. Not everyone is attacking you. Not everyone hates you. Right? Not everyone's a narcissist. And inviting accountability and agency, because I mean, how much of our agency gets trapped under um, our power, you know, when we're traumatized. We lose all of that. And so I have to restore that. I want to restore that. I want to help people restore that. So the healer's task is to deeply listen, not just to the story, though, to the song, to the constitution, to the wounding, to the inner narrative, the inner delusion, the wahm. The wahm is the inner delusion. And recognizing the inner pattern beneath all the symptoms. And then, inshallah ta'ala, facilitating through a appropriate administration of a remedy according to the law of similars so that the vital force can restore harmony. That's in a nutshell what the homeopath is after. And the remedy is not given to cure diseases. Right? We're not attacking pathology. In homeopathy, we don't attack the war on cancer, the war on COVID. No, that's not our way at all. It's a very Western way. It's a very controlling way, right? It's a very military, industrial, complex, inspired way. Of course, big pharma and big military, you know, big arms are two peas in a pod. No, the remedy is not given to cure diseases, to fight diseases, but to awaken the inner vitality, the inner living organism, the inner healing power of the individual, the inner intelligence, the inner balance. Yes. And it's a beautiful practice. It's a beautiful way of practicing medicine. Typically, because of the preparation of remedies, it's very safe. It's an energetic administration. So even if something like I mentioned arsenicum album, what's arsenic? What's arsenic? Arsenic is poison. It's a rat poison. Arsenicum album, white arsenic. Album means white. Arsenicum album is white arsenic. Hmm. Why am I using a poison to treat pathology or treat the imbalance of the vital force? SubhanAllah, Allah Ta'ala puts His wisdom anywhere and everywhere. It's an incredible remedy. Arsenicum album is a polycrest. It's not even just this peripheral remedy that we use. It is a polycrest. Top 10. I mean, it was part of my top first 10 remedies I wanted to share with you of the 35 in the book. It's top 10. Incredible. And in some way, I like to think about it like, subhanAllah, the person's in a imbalanced state. For the sake of the example, a state of pathology. Here's a poison. Like cures like, right? It doesn't have to be like that, but it's not irrational. This thing causes poison in the body. The body is acting in a poisoned state, like yours like. But also, it could be a flower, like pulsatilla, that meets the individual. We don't determine the essence of things or their healing powers rationally. We do it through provings, empirically. So we actually test them. We test them. And that's what is really deep and beautiful about homeopathy. We're not just hypothesizing. How can we, what is how can we bring together a model that uses both poison and flower to heal? The only way we can really rationalize is say, Allahu Akbar. Okay? Allahu Akbar. But when you prove both of them, their indications are quite clear, crystal clear. And they're both high yield remedies, meaning when they're given, subhanAllah, things really change. The person really begins to transform and to remember who they are. And that's very beautiful. Yes, it's very beautiful. So I hope, insha'Allah ta'ala, your juices are flowing. That you're starting to really begin to see what we're talking about here in homeopathic psychology as a new vantage point, a new horizon, a new way of looking, a new way of understanding the natural world, how Allah Ta'ala sends down His healing. The Prophet ﷺ teaches us, Inna Allah lam yunzil da'an illa unzila lahu shifa. That Allah does not send down a disease, make it possible for someone to get a certain type of disease, except that He sends down with it a corresponding cure, which tells me what? Which tells you what? There's something similar between the remedy and the disease. The da and the dawa, even in Arabic, the words are almost exactly the same. They're almost similar. Da and dawa. Da and dawa. Disease, remedy. Even the language is similar. I'm just saying. I'm not saying, but I am saying. That's something really interesting to me. And the fact that he sends them down together. So there's a connection between them. And he sends down the pathology in the human being, and he sends down the corresponding the corresponding the corresponding dawa, remedy, somewhere in the created world. I didn't say natural world. It can be in the plant kingdom, it can be in the animal kingdom, it can be in the mineral kingdom, it can be a poison. It could be anything. And some remedies can be pretty interesting where you get remedies from. But it's like anything out there can be proven, and its healing powers and indications can be known. And then the hadith continues, من علمه علمه ومن جهله جهله. Whoever knows this reality, knows these remedies, these imbalance and remedy dyads, knows it. And whoever doesn't know it, doesn't know it. جهله جهل ومن جهله جهله. So may Allah make us people that know and come to learn. Inshallah ta'ala, there's some deep understanding of the healing process, not in terms of how can I quell and suppress, but how can I harmonize and match something out there with me? That the macrocosm and the microcosm meet, and that's how healing ensues. Something out there has to meet me. And maybe that's why we're Khalifatullah fil ard, in potentiality. That for us to really know ourselves, we have to know the world and be in relationship with it as deep as our own healing process. It's not intellectual relationship. No, the world will heal you. Allah will heal you in this way. And you understand the deep relationship and the deep harmony that lives between the human being and the created world. And then from there, inshallah ta'ala, we can step into our purpose as khulafa, as ambassadors of light, of nubuwa, alayhi salatu wassalam, of responsibility, of caretaking, of nurturing, of protecting, of guiding, of leading, of following, of serving. Inshallah ta'ala. Okay. Hafadhakum Allah. We've been going for an hour and a half. I'm going to end this here. I hope all of you have had a good time, and we're going to end this, inshallah ta'ala. Barakallah ta'ala fikum. Hope you had a good taste. But for you here, inshallah, we'd love to, would it be appropriate to take a little break? I know we've been going for a while. Would you like to take a little break and come back for Q&A and discussion? Yeah, let's take a 9-minute break. How about that? We come back maybe 15 minutes before the hour. Would that be okay? That's great. Okay. And then maybe we'll go for from there, we can go like 15. No, I'm sorry, not 15. We'll go for 15 minutes. For those that have to leave, you have to leave, marhaban. I'll stay for about half an hour, just so you know. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit more time because I think you may need it. I want you to ask your questions and I want us to really get this. Inshallah. Okay, take your break. See you soon. Okay, Bismillah. So, welcome back, everyone. Talk to me. Questions, reflections? Yes, Luisana.
Assalamualaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Okay, I have a question in regards to, so because I know that, people take supplements and herbs and things like that. So, like, the idea behind homeopathy is, as you were saying, communication, kind of, helping the body get to where it needs to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so then there's a situation where a person's really ill, right? A person can't, for example, walk, and they're doing work with homeopathy. Would I'm assuming that we use herbs and things like that kind of like crutches, right? To kind of help because, in certain situations, like when you have to take care of kids and so on, especially we live very isolated. If this person is bedridden, you
Mm-hmm.
give herbs, I assume, kind of like crutches. Doesn't that interfere, though, in what presents to you as a practitioner? And isn't that problematic?
Can be.
And so then
Can.
what do you do in a situation like that? How do you balance it to not mask so much so the person can still show up with what they need to show up with?
Not all herbs are masking. Some
Mhm.
herbs are tonifying. So it depends on how you use the herbs, right? Not all herbs are being used with the same intention and the same um, um, seeking of an effect, right? So, for example, when you use turmeric in high doses, what's the effect of that?
It helps with inflammation.
Yeah, it's
So, well,
anti-inflammatory. So we're suppressing inflammation, right? Um, with homeopathy, you might give her something that actually kind of leans into the inflammation. So you may give something like a belladonna that actually increases the fever, or heparin that increases the fever. Um, so we don't want to necessarily approve, but maybe I'm giving something. So I'm giving a remedy, and I'm also giving a herb that supports immune function. I'm giving astragalus root, okay, or I'm giving echinacea, okay, and echinacea both. They're kind of supporting the immune system, and then I'm giving a remedy that I'm not trying to necessarily support the immune system, trying to support the energy body through the law of similars. but that's what's needed in that moment, and so they happen to come together. Now, in other cases, there may be a need for palliation, taking the edge off. People are like, I'm so struggling right now that like, and even my willpower and my psychological himma, my resolve to heal, so diminished that I need something before I can like be open to deeper healing. So we give supplements, take it for the pain. We maybe take pharmaceuticals, take away the pain, kind of a temporary oasis, kind of just rest stop, because the journey can be long. Some cases there's some people have like 20, 30 years of suppression.
Mhm.
And there's like psychological suppression, there was abuse of food, there was abuse of drugs, all sorts of things. So the journey may take a while, maybe not 30 years, I mean, I remember a teacher said, hey, if you're coming to me and you've been living out of harmony for 30 years, you've been walking to a thick forest for 30 years and lost, it may take you 30 years to walk back out. Now, alhamdulillah, by the fadl of Allah, it's not one to one, but it may
Mhm.
not be a weekend retreat either, right? It may be months or years, maybe a decade. The way I frame it is that our whole life is about healing. So it's not something that like just has to get done and then we're healthy and vital and then, we just continue with our lives. That's not how we think about it. Same with
Mhm.
spirituality. It's not just like I'm gonna go on Hajj and come back and kind of I did my spiritual thing, you know,
Right.
got my spiritual muscles, got my spiritual supplements. It's our
Mhm.
whole lives.
Right.
So that way it takes the edge off and we can just be with what is, be with what Allah Ta'ala is creating for me in this moment. This is kind of the spirituality of healing, right? We're just like, before we even get to taking remedies and we even, get to like meeting with someone that can help me, is I'm interfacing directly with Ash-Shafi, Al-Shafi, the healer. Allah is Al-Shafi. And he's also Al-Aziz. He's also the mighty. And he's also the king, Al-Malik. And we bow to him. You
Mhm.
like we surrender to him. And there's an indication of this that I've been liking to share, which is in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which he says, "Tadawu ya ibadallah." Seek healing, O servants of Allah, which is an indication, inshallah ta'ala, that first you should become ibadullah. Before you seek healing, you have to become abd. You have to enter the state of ubudiyah, which is not just I'm a Muslim, yeah, I pray and I fast. The state of ubudiyah, like I surrender to you, ya Allah. You're the Lord. I'm a slave. You're absolute. I'm contingent. You're the creator. I'm the creation. You're free, you're independent and free and rich, and I'm very needy. You become abd, and then from there, tadawu, seek healing. From there, you can apply, you know, the general recommendation of the Quran, which is فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge, the knowledge that you're seeking specifically. So here would be, a doctor, a hakim, a homeopath. If you don't know, seek someone that knows if you don't know, and seek, your healing that way. So there's different levels here. Yeah. But yeah, herbs can definitely be suppressing and herbs can be facilitating. It just depends on how they're used and which herbs are being used.
What if, in the case, because a lot of people our age are starting to look into HRT. A lot of men are looking into like testosterone, and how does that change a person? Is it a drastic thing? Like, I guess my concern is, does it get in the way of your homeopathic treatment?
It can,
Right?
for sure.
Yeah.
It can. A lot of things can. I
Yeah.
mean, drinking coffee can get in the way of treatment. We're dealing with energies, we're dealing with very subtle energies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So like even like remedies can be affected by fields. So even like
Hmm.
taking your kit through the airport scanner can affect them. So what about if you're like living in an airport scanner? If you're living within range of your Wi-Fi routers and stuff. I mean, it's all that stuff is we're just living in a different world right now, guys. We're just living in a different world. And that's why also we just can't have the same expectations. Even when you read about the ideal of homeopathy, which is what basically I was speaking about in class today, right? It's very ideal. Alhamdulillah. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful ideal and it's true. We also have to just meet it with where we're at and understand that Allah Ta'ala is guiding our process and, you know, um, to put our expectations, in a proper place as well. But yeah, it's true. A lot of things can antidote, no doubt. Your food intolerances can antidote, I believe, you know, all the things that we mentioned, all the chemicals in our water and air and stuff like that. These things can all be influencing factors. So maybe I'm not gonna give you a higher dose because I don't want you to aggravate, but it may take, at the lower dose, it may take longer to get the effect intended. And that's okay too. That's just part of the world that we're in.
And if it does change a person's presentation, does it really matter? Because if they're presenting a certain way, you give the matching presentation, right? Anyway, um, like I don't even know how to ask that, but it's like, okay, so this person's been taking, I don't know, this hormone for X amount of time, and they're presenting a different way now. And if you treat based on what they're presenting there, is it still matching? Does that question make sense? Maybe
Sort
it's
of,
too like
but also, Luisana, I think we're getting out of the scope of today's first lecture. So let's just hold our horses a little bit. I
okay,
know, and like, yeah, the question made a little bit of sense. I think it can be clarified. I think
hmm
you can sit with it more and clarify it.
yeah,
But also, like, I do want us to all just be together for this first
yeah,
lecture. And you've taken the level one course, and you're a student of this knowledge and stuff like that. So I want to just make sure we're all kind of getting lecture one and really
okay,
kind of moving together. But it's good that you're thinking about these things, and I want to encourage you to continue to do that. Um, but let's just, yeah, kind of let's work on clarifying that question for next time and just moving
all
forward.
right.
Okay?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hmm.
Thank you. Yes, Iman, out in Sydney, Australia.
Sorry,
Alaikum salam.
um, I that was really good. Thank you very much. It was pretty brilliant listening to that.
Mm,
I enjoyed it. Um, I just have two quick questions. My first one is about the scope of use of this kind of knowledge. Um, just for some of us that, do some kind of therapy with people. I was just kind of wondering, and obviously, not being trained at all, medically or from a homeopathic perspective. So I
mhm,
was kind of just wondering, I was thinking about one of the slides that you presented about deep listening and using this knowledge as a means by which we sort of frame our understanding of deeper causes. Of people's patterns and things like that. Like, I was kind of just wondering, is that the extent of how we would use the knowledge in this course? Obviously for ourselves first and foremost, but like, I guess it can't be helped that these things are going to be sort of pondered about when with a client. So I was just sort of interested in sort of understanding to what extent and how this knowledge can be used by, your everyday therapist.
mhm,
And my second question was just about Ignatia. Is that only prescribed when someone has grief related to death, or is it also prescribed for people that have grief related to just and a loss outside of death, such as a kind of way of living that they were
mhm,
accustomed to, or like certain relationships with friends and siblings that they had prior to that?
mhm.
So yeah, what kind of grief is it sort of
Yeah.
targeting specifically?
So, thank you. So, regarding the second question first, Ignatia, when it's given in first aid uses for acute grief, can be the grief of loss, can be like anything out of the ordinary. Your dog died, someone you love died, you lost your job, you're in grief. Like your response to that wasn't anger, it was grief, right? So you're in shock, grief, shock thing. If it was like anxiety shock, it'd probably be something more like aconite. But if it's grief shock, it'd be ignatia and the first aid. But when we talk about it later, I think week 8, as a constitution, it'd be more like what you said about life and things like not being what you expected.
Mm,
Maybe kind of like a disappointment, like the grief of a disappointed life, something like
mm,
that. So does that make
mm,
sense? So it's not like
mm,
the shocking loss of a loved one. It's like this global, like the air that you breathe, kind of this cloud over you for 10 years of this disappointment in my life. Does that make sense?
mm,
Yeah. So that we'll talk more about the latter. In level 1, we talked about the first aid use of ignition for acute grief. Level 2, we'll talk more about kind of the heavier kind of, um, yeah, kind of lifestyle of ignition. Yeah. Sabrina made a face. I wasn't sure if it was a face or the hand. Does that make sense? Iman, is that
mm,
helpful?
mm,
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Oh, and then for the first one, the first question, look, I'm not gonna give people like permission to use this after this first lecture.
mm,
You have permission if you finish level 1, you have permission to treat yourselves and your kiddos with low potencies, like was mentioned in level 1, 30C. No more. You can do 12C, you can do 30C.
mm,
Maybe for the certain like Ignatia and like Aconite and Arnica, you can do 200C, as was mentioned in level 1. So a little bit like a medium potency. But here in psychological prescribing, we're dealing with a lot more. We're dealing with chronic
mm,
stuff. So we're just building the framework for that now. My hope is that
mm,
you would just practice this knowledge and like note it in your charts, for example, and
mm,
maybe consult with me or someone
mm,
like me. And then over time, if I feel like, you really get it, then I'd be
mm,
happy to get you permission and like really give you, like
mm,
show you the ropes,
mm,
and I think maybe supervision would be
mm,
the next step, like a group of you
mm,
that want to take it next level.
mm,
I could start presenting cases. We could talk about how to prescribe, how to follow up the case. I mean, remember, this is a whole system of medicine. Like I learned this
mm,
over the course of 2 years in medical school.
mm, mm,
And then, later trainings with,
mm,
like, post doctoral training and stuff like that. I'm still
Okay.
studying it. But like, yeah, yeah, we'll just leave it
Mm,
at that. Yeah.
okay.
So it'd be
Mm,
something that we just kind of have a relationship, you and I,
mm,
us and us together in
mm,
terms of supervision. The same way, like if you're studying Islamic psychology now, like we do, for example, at
mm,
CMC, when you finish the course, a full year course, you're meeting 3 days a week for 2 hours, 6 hours a week for a full
mm,
year, and then doing a 2-week intensive in
mm,
Cambridge, you technically still can't call yourself a Islamic psychologist until
mm,
you do supervision.
mm,
So never
mm,
mind, that's dealing with. I'm not saying this is higher stake, but I mean in some ways way more
mm,
complicated dealing with
mm, mm,
also the body and dealing with
mm.
physical pathology.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I just wanted to clarify and just sort of try and understand how to position this knowledge in my in my head, yeah, and
Yes,
in my life and the
I
way that I
encourage you.
interact with people.
I encourage you to just as you
Mm,
learn it over this course,
mm,
all of you, that you begin to just the same way if you learn the 4 temperaments, you're like, oh, like you're sitting at a park and that kid looks
mm,
more sanguine, that kid looks more
mm,
choleric, they're more kind of aggressive and they're a little bit more competitive, and this kid's a
mm,
little bit more slower, kind of doing their own thing, and just kind of
mm,
noticing these things. You start noticing it in your chart when you're charting notes with your patients. Just like, oh, I learned about lycopodium. Like, I think this person might be lycopodium. Let me kind of sit with it. It's just for you to start practicing. It becomes a language that you start to speak with it just within yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And over time, it becomes like ilm,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
something that you can really like start to work with.
Yeah, that's really helpful. That I think the response that you gave me was kind of how I anticipated to sort of start thinking about this sort of stuff. So
Good.
yeah.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Very good. Yes, Asala. Assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله. How are you, Dr. Mazen? كيف حالك?
Alhamdulillah. بخير. بخير. Happy to see you.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, me too. I'm happy to be here in this course. I benefited a lot from the remembering of the heart. So I'm excited to, inshallah, learn from this unique knowledge. I have 3 questions related to the introductory lecture from today. So the first one is, I'm very systematic. I think you know that. So will we be taught the systematic structure? So when you were saying earlier, when we see this, we should know that it's this. Will you go into that details? Because I'm interested to know. So that's my first question. The second question is, how are these remedies extracted specifically? Are they done in like different ways, and how is this different from pharmaceuticals? Because I have a background in health, I'd be very interested to learn more about that. And I think that affects a lot if we're saying that this is a natural form of remedy, or is it just another pharmaceutical? It just looks different, right? It's not herbalism. So what is it? And my third question is related to the Islamic rootings, and maybe it's a fiqh question, I'm not sure. But you said earlier that this was a form of science, and there is some overlap, and maybe Ibn Sina was mentioned a few times by the founder 200 years ago. Is there anything, and in Islam, like we know, we don't, if it's scientific and it can help us and there's evidence of that, then it shouldn't Islam doesn't go against science. But I'm wondering, is there more Islamic rooting to homeopathy? Is there, I don't know, any research or knowledge on that? I think that would make it more valuable, at least to me personally, that like to combine the science with the Islamic sciences, the Western health sciences and the Islamic sciences, to be specific. Okay,
Yes.
that's all
Bismillah.
for now.
So in terms of the third question, I think it's a really good question, and I probably should have put that probably as a slide as a point. But in Tibb al-Nabawi, you have an approach that no one really understands. Like we see all these prescriptions, this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and like we see his, kind of the end of however he thought, however his quote unquote clinical reasoning was. We see the conclusion of it. We don't know actually how he understood things, right? Kind of at some point people say, oh, he was working with like the hot, cold, wet, dry, because he talked about balancing the cucumber and the date, for example. And there's other things that he would do like that. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But also there's an interesting relaying of a prescription that was more akin to the law of similars. So, for example, one day he came back home, and Sayyidah Aisha was treating a woman with a goiter. She had a thyroid goiter, right? She's like a big enlarged thyroid gland. Have you guys seen this before? Like a big kind of enlarged thyroid gland. It's called a goiter. And I said Aisha would spend time listening to the Prophet ﷺ, speaking with the physicians, so she had a lot of knowledge. But he walked in and she was like pressing on it, which is interesting because that's an indication of what? Suppression. Right? She was trying to like push against it, and the Prophet ﷺ said, "No, don't do that." Right? And he told her what's better for this case is the custos root. Now, what is taken from that is that the goiter was explained that it was kind of like a hyperthyroid case, which is a hot condition in the language of hot, cold, wet, dry. It's a hot condition. It's an excess condition. It's hot.
Mm-hmm.
Costos root is a very hot principle root, like I think third or fourth degree in that system, which is very high heating. So energetically, we're not giving like a marshmallow root, which is wet, or like oats, or something with milk or something. He's giving custos root, almost like a burning scalding, hot principle remedy for a hot condition. So there's a more of a similar, it's more according to the law of similars than law of opposites, right? So he did both. There's kind of inclination, there's indication, sorry, that he did both, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he would balance according to the law of opposites, and he would use thinking akin to the law of similars. But the point is, really, we don't really know how he thought. No one can say, I do prophetic medicine. What do you mean, do prophetic medicine? You just kind of take the prescriptions of the Prophet ﷺ and just repeat them. That's not what he was doing, right? He was actually applying hikmah. We just don't know how he was thinking about it. So you can't really claim prophetic medicine. You know what I mean? Like, it's a big claim. It's a big
Yeah.
claim. It's a big claim. I don't like that claim. I don't make that claim. I like hikmah, right? The systematic, kind of rational system of healing, as opposed to this is how the Prophet ﷺ practiced. I have no idea how he practiced. I have an idea, but no real certainty, rather. So that's that. Yeah, that's kind of what I want to say about that. Can you remind me quickly of the first question?
The first one about the system of how to identify, I guess, constitutions and remedies.
Well, we're gonna start by just learning the constitutions, and like that's the main knowledge, right? Once you learn the keynotes, you'll just begin to see, like, even in this room, there's multiple temperaments, constitutions, so we can begin to kind of just be curious together about what's here, yeah, and begin to even, without it being awkward, we don't have to sit here and like unpack people, but like if you want to volunteer, we can like talk about stuff, and just give examples. I think that'd be really cool. But the course you have to begin with a base of knowledge. You have to know the remedies. And then you have to be curious. You have to be open to just seeing and observing, right? We have to develop our perceptions if we're going to be in this work. We have to open our heart. We have to open our intellects. We have to open our senses. We have to be in our bodies. We have to be curious. I'm not trying to understand to control. I want to let me breathe you in. Let me listen to the inner song. Let me see how you feel. There's knowledge, and then there's like, the art of this craft, which is just like feeling into it, like, opening up to your intuition. Like sometimes someone will say something, and I'll be like, this image just flashed across my mind. I'm just curious, and like, oh, I just had that same image too, or I was just thinking about that like 10 seconds ago. It's like, yeah, I picked up on it. But how am I, like, that's not really scientific, if you will, kind of approach. But I'm tapping into something through perception. But we're going to start with knowledge. You have to understand. And I mean, there's some memorization involved here, obviously, too, especially at the beginning. Like, you're going to have to memorize the constitutions. There's no other way around it, right? You have to memorize the keynotes of each of these remedies, which can take time. Like, remember in school, we learn, 2 or 3 of these a day. And when a test came, I had to know 40, 50 of them. And I had no clinical practice, so I had no idea of how it actually looked like in real life. So it's not easy. I'm not, but like, you have to do it. And then once you start practicing, once you start bringing it into the world, just being curious, like just sitting with your family, like, who's in my family? Like, who are you people? I'm not trying to control and judge you. I just want to know you. Who are you? Like, I know the constitutions of all my parents, my parents, my siblings, my kids, my wife, my in-laws. Like, I know. I have a map because it just helps me it helps me get to know them. And just know, for example, like their woundings and their tendencies. And sometimes I know their stories and like it fully corroborates. Like I know for a fact, I see the hikmah, I see the lineage, I see destiny unfolding. I can see it. And it helps me just be able to understand them and connect to them.
hmm
Yeah.
Are there any charts in the book that we're looking into that might help
You're a
kind of
chart
direct
person. You
it?
can make charts. No, I don't think
Mhm.
there's any charts. There's no charts, there's no pictures in the book.
Like if it's this, then that, if it's,
It's
like with the
don't follow.
diagnosis tree or
No, you're coming at it totally different. You're gonna have to park that. You're gonna have to put down, and Imam Abu Hassan al-Shadili, he came to meet his teacher, Imam Abdul Salam ibn Mashish. He came to a well at the base of the mountain,
Mm.
and he told him, oh, he made wudu and he went up to meet the sheikh, and the sheikh greeted him and says, "Go down and make wudu." He didn't make wudu. He goes down, was like, "I made wudu." He's like, "All right," but he's listening. He went down to make wudu. Goes down, takes off his shoes, socks, makes wudu, whatever. Goes back up, come back and make wudu. It took him like 4 or 5 times until he realized, oh, he's not talking about like wudu, wudu. He's talking about like inner wudu. Like I need to come clean, like come open. Maybe, whatever was in his heart before, there was something perhaps in his heart that he was coming with that he wasn't aware of. The sheikh was like, you're not going to be able to benefit from me with that in your heart. There's something similar about that here, that you're not going to be able to really see and appreciate homeopathy as its own system, its own thing, if you come with your, preconceived notions. And even with your own tendencies and, your own just nafsani, with your own nafs. There's something
Mhm.
about just being open. And we all do this, right? Even people here that are really eager beavers and, you know, coming really open, like there's still something, whew, whether I'm looking for the system or I'm looking to understand the whole thing and how I'm going to practice it or whatever. There's all these different things like, take a breath. This is lecture one. We're just landing. And I want to encourage all of you, just, it will come, inshallah ta'ala. Rabbi zidna ilma. Rabbi
Amen.
zidna ilma. I started learning about this in 2014. SubhanAllah. It's been 11 years I've been in this world of homeopathy. Actually, a little bit before then, because I was reading from Hakim in 2013 still. But okay, whatever. 11, 12 years. I'm still getting it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm still getting it. I'm still deepening my knowledge. It's one of those things that, like, I'll tell you firsthand. I'll tell you upfront, clearly. Homeopathy can be relatively easy to get. Like first aid. I think all the first aid people that took level one, you got it. Like, I know you got it. And I was testing you with Remedies at the end. Like, you really got it. It's easy to learn, more or less. But to really grasp it, especially this type of, like this level, first aid is kind of simple. This level of homeopathy, you can get it more or less in a few weeks, a few months. But if you want to master it, it's going to be a fat from Allah Ta'ala. It's not going to be systems in
Mhm.
place. Systems will help you. If you like systems, maybe you can create systems. I encourage you to. I really do. I mean, do what you do. There's a secret, there's a gift in that, right? Even our own temperaments, our own constitutions, our nufus, it's not all bad, right? There's also gifts there too. So you'll see different types of homeopathic teachers. They bring different elements to the work. They each kind of bring themselves. Some systemize it, some make it very spiritual, some are more like classic, some are like kind of very creative in the ways that like, hey, look, like within the principles, like I can do this and do that, and it makes a lot of sense. The people of orthodoxy will be like, you are a munafiq. Hanuman's rolling in his grave. And then he's like, no, Hanuman would be proud of me. I'm developing his baby. You see, I'm taking his baby to the next level. You're like stuck in the old days. It's like I study with all of them because they're all I study with the they're like they act like we're Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, it's like boom. Or like we're this tariqah, we're the specific we're the one saved sect. The one saved tariqah. All the other turuq are batil. We're the one tariqah. And then it's like, no, like I'm gonna form my own tariqah. But like look how amazing it is. Now, I don't recommend that in tasawwuf. I'm just using this just to kind of give you a mental, language here, or like an image. But I don't recommend that in Islam. Islam, so kind of as a different thing. But I like to study with all of them. Okay, they all kind of have, to me, a sliver of hikmah. A sliver of the truth. And they all bring themselves, and I like that. Anyways, so also, did I
Yeah,
answer all your
understood.
questions, Asada?
Yeah, it was just about the extraction, like how is it
Now,
created,
did you
especially
take level
pharmaceutically?
one?
But we can... No, I haven't.
It
I
would have
have
been
I have a
helpful.
general sense, but I'm just wondering if like what's the proportion of it being extracted chemically versus the natural ingredient, let's say the poison or the plant.
Yeah. So, in a nutshell, remedies are prepared from the original substance. So let's say it's a plant. Let's say it's a flower or something, an herb. You make a mother tincture. So you somehow
Hmm.
prepare it as like as a botanical, as an herb first.
Hmm.
So you put it in, let's say, alcohol or glycerate for a month and let it
Hmm.
macerate and like let all the compounds, all the energetics of that plant macerate and infuse the tincture. Okay. And then
Hmm.
after a month, I start making certain types of dilutions. And there's a specific homeopathic approach to it using dilution and succussion, which we can talk about sometime, but I don't want to get into it right now. To basically dematerialize the um, the remedy. So the more you potentize it, the more you hyper dilute it and succuss it, the more you strip away the chemistry. And what you're left with is the energetic signature, or we would say the ruh of that thing, the information, the deeper information of that thing. And that's what's curative, because it's the ruh that speaks to the ruh of the substance, the ruh of the flower in this case, or the plant, the herb, that speaks to your ruh. So the energetic component or dimension speaks to your energetic dimension. So I don't want the chemistry. Actually, the chemistry is in the way because the chemistry is going to affect my chemistry. So I don't want it to. I want the influence to be purely energetic. So I strip away all the body, the jism of, pulsatilla, and then I'm left just with the signature, the essence of pulsatilla. And then I put that into basically I put it into either water or a certain there's pellets. So there's here it is. Just for example, these pellets that I think you're all familiar with more or less. And these are blank pellets. They're typically like a sucrose pellet, and then you medicate them. So you kind of pour the potentized um, preparation over this, and then this becomes, you know, nux vomica, pulsatilla, or whatever, in the potency that it was made in.
Yeah,
So yeah, everything is taken in its original form, but it's ultimately potentized and dematerialized because we don't want the chemistry. So this is also, like where a lot of the criticism comes from because you're like, oh, you're not doing anything. So you're just giving placebo. There's nothing in what you're doing because you're giving such a high potency you're doing such a high dilution, there's nothing in there, which we don't believe. We believe in, you know, the memory of water, for example, that you can, express something. You can read Quran or even speak words to water, and there's a memory to it, right? For example. And now that there's research too, people have some funding. So in India, for example, there's a lot more research going on than anywhere else in the world in homeopathy. They now are doing studies, and you can look this up, and it's fascinating. But they find that higher potencies, meaning more diluted, more potentized remedies, actually have more energetic substance than the lower potencies, which is opposite what the physics would tell us, or the Newtonian physics would tell us. Because the more you dilute something, the less of it there is. But Hahnemann said, no, at some point, it would increase, and it becomes more energetically active the higher you potentize it. And they found now with electron microscopes, you can look into the actual atom and look at the subatomic particles. They found that higher potency remedies, so for example, a 1000 C or 1M pulsatilla, is significantly more active energetically. There's more photons, there's more energetic activity than a lower potency remedy of the same kind. That's fascinating. Hahnemann was right. And we observe, like I know for a fact that a 200C potency works a lot faster and deeper and creates more of an aggravation in cases than a 30C, which is much more mild and lower potency. So we know this for a fact, but it's cool that now even the science, because now there's investment, because the government and the AMA and the Western establishment is not going to give $1 million for this research. But in India, there's so much infrastructure around homeopathy and investment that they're actually doing the research, right? Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you. Sabrina. Sabrina, how are you?
Assalamualaikum. This was so awesome. I was like during the break, just like, oh, I can't believe it. I'm just so happy that that you're offering this, mashallah. But I guess like there's like this one little thing that just keeps coming up for me that I think if I was able to maybe understand better, I could feel a bit more confident. So you gave an example earlier about like if we're giving this remedy to somebody, they might start feeling like, okay, yeah, I'm just like driving more intensely now, or like that more intense. Like if you're giving the remedy to somebody who it doesn't match with, that's what I mean. Then all of a sudden they start experiencing like the, I guess like symptoms of that remedy, because it wasn't their match. So yeah, I guess I'm just
in the proving.
Yeah,
someone's proving it.
Yeah. So basically, like I'm understanding that homeopathy is safe, but I'm always nervous about like giving a remedy that is not the right remedy, and then it creates a problem for somebody, or it creates
good.
that balance for them. Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. No, alhamdulillah. Look, it is still safe. You can give the wrong remedy, and there can be an effect. So, for example, when they prove it's not, you're usually not giving it. I mean, it could be for someone that needs it, right? But typically we say healthy people, balanced people that don't have any immediate mental or physical pathology. If they happen to be of that same constitution, it'll just help them. But maybe actually they start to present with it and prove the remedy. But if it's, and that's possible, and either way, it's not the end of the world, right? Because they're healthy and balanced, and they usually give low potencies. And if they were to follow up with the prescriber or the researcher, they would let them know, and the prescriber would be aware of it and to be taken care of, and it wouldn't be a disaster. It's still the remedy. But if it's not the remedy that they're proving, think of it this way: because it's not harmonizing with the deepest part of them, it's not going to have any lasting effect. It's like for example, I think of it this way: like you're introducing so much influence of the remedy that you're proving into the organism that the organism just starts to like project it like a movie. It's just like it's projecting it kind of like artificially, it's not actually the vital, like, it's not the true vital force. It's not like changing who you are. It just starts to you become so full of the proving remedy that you begin to kind of express it. But it's like a movie. It's like a virtual expression. It's not a real expression. It's a projection. It's not an expression. And basically, the solution to that would be to stop taking the remedy and it would go away. Yeah. So with provings, like even people, I mean, that's always kind of what you look for in provings. Like people start like, you want them to prove it, but you don't want them to like aggravate, right? You don't want them to be, but the solution, if it's not their remedy, is just for them to stop taking the remedy. And it would just stop influencing them and they stop over uh, being overfilled with that energy and stop projecting it. It would go away. So there's no harm. So if you guys are not doing provings, maybe one day we can do a proving. I remember a friend of mine who actually was one of the people that got me into homeopathy originally, even before Hakim and before I started school. He was doing provings with people and they were really interesting. So I think it'd be actually, if you're interested in it as a group, we could organize something just as almost like a experiment, right? More or less an experiment that we can just start to prove something together and see what comes up. It would not be any of the ones that we're studying. It'd be just a totally different remedy. Like maybe actually, did you guys read what was on this remedy? Maybe I'll give you this remedy. This is an interesting remedy. But it could be anything. And then we begin to actually just bring together our experiences and our feedback and then see if it matches the materia medica. You know, that'd be really cool. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that. I wouldn't be totally, worried. Like if you were to dose your child the 200C of what you really legitimately from proper study and reflection and observation deemed to be his remedy or her remedy, and it wasn't their remedy, you would not, cause any harm from dosing once, twice, thrice. But if you were to dose, for example, a remedy at 1 m repeatedly for 2 weeks daily or something, then we're getting into like, okay, you're definitely going to start proving the remedy, and it may not be fun. Like part of the, like one of the things I tell, I told one time to a cynic, like if you really, really want to doubt homeopathy, really, like it does nothing, take 1 m of belladonna twice a day for a week and let me know how you're doing. If it's really nothing, if it's just water, yeah, prove belladonna because you're gonna have a horrible time. You're gonna go into a fever. You might have night sweats. Like you're gonna have a horrible time. And then tell me it's just water. Yeah. But like otherwise, if you're not doing stuff like that, I wouldn't worry too much. But I don't also want to just give a blank permission slip to you all. That there is an amana here, and there is a principle of do no harm, which I mean, applies even for energetic remedies. And there is still even though it's very safe, it's the safest of medicines as far as I know. There's nothing safer. There's still kind of a way it can be abused, and I think in principle it still warrants caution and adab. Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I think that also like highlights how significant it is for like when the remedy is correct or is the match, because it seems like it just vibes with the person in a deep way.
Just vibes. Totally just vibes. I was having this recurring sore infection, like sore throat, and I got it when we were traveling a couple weeks ago, and it kept like I got better, alhamdulillah, pretty quickly, and it kept just gnawing at me. And sometimes homeopaths can be really bad patients. you know, I try to treat myself, and sometimes I do, and sometimes actually I'll just sleep it off. Then it'll just be a week, and I don't get better. That's kind of the veil of the doctor. It's notorious for really bad patients. But anyways, at some point I'm like, dang, I can't swallow. It's been 2 weeks. I still can't really swallow. Like I'm swallowing like that. You know when that happens, your lymph nodes are really swollen and stuff like that. It's like 2 days ago. I'm like, okay, this is enough. It's been 2 weeks. Like it was back when I was on the traveling 2 weeks ago. I got sick and I still kind of have this kind of thing. So I'm like, I grabbed my remedy. I'm not gonna tell you my remedy for now. Maybe it'll slip out later. Maybe you'll guess. Um, but I dosed it at nighttime, and immediately I just felt like, bullseye. Alhamdulillah. Next morning was like 30% better. I dosed it again. And by evening, I'm like, Subhanallah Azim. It's completely gone. I get 2 doses of 200C. Yeah, because I know my remedy. I try not to take it too much. And I like coffee, so coffee antidotes it a lot, and I know that. And if I really need it, I stop coffee. But I've been having coffee lately, so. But I paused it yesterday, and today I haven't had coffee yet. So I wanted to kind of just stay working, and not antidote it. But so far so good. I'm swallowing with no problem now, and my swelling lymph nodes and all that is. Before it was like I was whinging if someone was to palpate and put pressure. Now, alhamdulillah, it's all good. Anyway, so that's just knowing if you know your remedy too, it's really your remedy. It has lasting effects. Even and there's approaches where even in acute care, there's 2 different approaches for acute. For those of you that took level 1, maybe and can follow along here, there's 2 approaches in acute prescribing. One is it's a different remedy than your constitutional. You have to match the specifics of the acute state to a different remedy. But other people, and I like both, and I see both work, and sometimes it doesn't work. But for me, it's the latter. It worked where my constitutional remedy helps with acutes as well. Helps with acutes. So when I get sick, I take my constitutional. And with my kids, typically I do the same, and it helps a lot. But it's not foolproof. Sometimes you do have to take a different remedy. So, yeah, there is some nuance there. Anyways, okay. Rahma, how are you, Rahma?
Good. Assalamu alaikum.
Our friend in Sweden, yes?
Finland.
Finland.
They
Yes.
already have like self-esteem issues because we're compared to the Swedes.
Yeah.
We're the poor
Forgive me.
cousins.
Are you? No, I have my favorite knife is from Finland. Oh, I told you about that, didn't I?
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah,
We did.
alhamdulillah, all is good. And Jazakallah khairan for this. It's a
Yeah.
blessing to be here learning from you and also just in the company of fellow seekers of knowledge.
Alhamdulillah.
I have 2 questions, and obviously I'm coming from a complete background of I know nothing about this. My first one was I was just curious when we talk about the inner nature, like what is our constitution, and in Islam we understand this to be our fitra. We also, my understanding is that in Islam is your fitra can change based on your environment. It doesn't stay as is, or maybe you do come back to it. So I was just wondering, is that also something we understand? Like, does our inner nature, does it change or does it get masked? Or how do I understand that? That's the first question. And then the second one is, I guess maybe along that line, is understanding our psychological dimension. So for example, you mentioned these 3 examples of like natrium muriaticum. So if they, for example, go on the path of healing and understand who they are, even though maybe their inner nature or their base is somebody that has fear of rejection and does not want to be vulnerable, do they unlearn that? Is that something that happens, or how do we, I'm struggling to sort of reconcile those two things in my mind.
Yeah, very good. So for the first question, Rahma, we are born in fitrah, and the fitrah is in the heart. And and the heart is embodied. So when we are being our true, genuine selves, we're back home. We're back in that pure alignment with nature, with Allah Ta'ala, with ourselves. But as you said very beautifully, that we're affected by our family life, our societies, the traumas and triggers of our, environment. And so we change. Now the fitrah does not change. The fitrah gets parked. We kind of want to protect it. So we park in the basement, in the garage, and we come to the surface wearing a new mask. And that's called nafs. I'm protecting myself. And I'm defending myself. I'm hiding myself. So I'm going to be like this now. I'm going to be maybe smiley and people pleasing. And I'm going to be angry and bark. You threaten me. You're looking at me. Right? Deep down inside, that person, Allah bless them. You have to understand psychology. It's like they're just really afraid that you're going to hurt them because they were hurt. He's barking because he's really afraid. That's if he was confident and happy and healthy and dignified, he's not gonna bark at people. I'm sorry, I'm saying barking, but even just getting angry at people and being irritable and being really aggressive, like overly aggressive, for no reason, like for no real, just kind of rationale or reason. The person is afraid, right? But it's their ego, it's their defense structure. So when we're talking about these constitutions, we're talking more about the ego. Right? We're talking about that. The fitrah is something else. The fitrah is, you may still have an inclination towards your ego, because your ego, you don't get rid of your ego. Right? You don't kill it. You can't kill it. You can cultivate it, it can grow, but you don't lose it, right? So even when you're back in your heart, you still have an inclination to move into ghafla, and go back into your nafs, go back into your constitution, for example. But more or less, your heart, your healthy, genuine self is not a temperament or constitution. If we were to call it anything, I'd call it a Muhammadan balance. Your own Muhammadan balance. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ فِيكُمْ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. And know that within you is the messenger of Allah. So that's not a constitution. I mean, it's a constitution of the Habib, the beloved, of the perfect man, right? And that's what we're trying to connect back to. And there's something inside of us that we can connect to that is connected to him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at a very deep level. We have to heal, remove these artifacts and these taints and these fragmentations. So, does that help? Is that clear for the first question? Thank you. And please, I'm so sorry. Can you remind me the second question?
Okay, fine. I guess I was wondering with the psychological dimensions, like the example of Natrium muriaticum, the person
Yes.
who is afraid to be vulnerable again, does that ever change once they learn
Yes.
about themselves?
Of course, we want that to change. She may always be inclined towards that. Like if, for example, God forbid, she gets rejected, she goes into natrum muriaticum state. So I'm used to saying natmer for short, but just to be clear, natrum muriaticum state, natmer for short. She goes into that state. She's been rejected, she's been hurt, she's been betrayed. Part of her says, never again. Walls, fortified. But I want love. So I'll love you behind the wall and please love me and reciprocate. But I can't show you who I really am. I can't show you how much I actually love and care, how tender I am. but can you please like know it's there? It's like this, like, please come, but like I can't meet you. Like, it's like that kind of thing. It's like Rapunzel. Like, I'm up there and I can't come down, but I let down climb my hair. I'm here for you. It's like, how am I gonna get up there? Like, come down, open the door. No, no, no. Climb my hair. That's a little bit of Natmer, yeah. It's really fortified, mashallah. But yeah, of course, like as she heals, she remembers her heart, she comes back to herself, she remembers Allah Ta'ala's mercy, she begins to trust Allah, have tawakkul. The remedy starts to balance the constitution, move that stagnation, open her back into her trust and her openness and her courage and dignity and her vulnerability. Then yeah, of course she comes back to her heart, and Natmer, that state can evolve into a healthier state. But like, let's say, God forbid, and Allah tests us in these ways, Allah is Allah. Allah is the Lord. And Allah will do Allah things. And let's say this person that she healed and she finally embraced and built a life with, and God forbid, but now he betrays her. Where's she going? She's going right back into Natmer world. She's going right back up to the fortress, right back up to the minaret, and she'll combing her hair for the next time she gets a little bit more confident and wants to let it down again. But she goes right back to the Natmer. That's why people, you'll see that even yourselves, you kind of fall into the same traps, the same addictions, the same traumatic way of thinking, the same compensatory ways. People prone to smoking cannabis and or playing video games or watching Turkish dramas for hours and just and it's cringy, but you have to just watch it, and you just become your mom, and your grandma, or you want to fight and you start training and start wrestling with people. You're in your 40s and you're like training for war, or buying guns and getting really interested in guns and gun culture, and you're shooting and carrying everywhere. Or you go on the apps and start, just trying to find love again, and you just, just, someone love me, and that kind of thing. Like anybody, somebody, and the first person that gives her attention or him attention, they're captured by them. Why do we do stuff like that? Whatever. There's 1,000 things that we do, but why do we do stuff like that again and again and again? And we remember, we move back into the heart, and then something happens, we go into ghafla, and we go back to the constitution, the homeopathic constitution, the nafs. We go back into ghafla. Allah. Yes? Familiar, yeah? Yeah. I know, we know. Everyone here knows. Alhamdulillah. So this is the journey. This is the journey of healing. This is the journey of remembering. This is the journey of defragmentation. This is the journey of return. But to know yourself is a tremendous resource. It's a tremendous source of himma, tawfiq. Allah wants you to know. فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Know that there is no God. فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ, that He is لا إله إلا الله. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ فِيكُمْ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. Know Allah, know the Messenger, know yourself. مَنْ عَرَفَ نَفْسَهُ فَقَدْ عَرَفَ رَبَّهُ. That's not Quran. Verse 2 of Quran. But like, these are things that are, subhanallah, the realities. May Allah give us tawfiq, inshallah ta'ala. May Allah give us openings through this knowledge specifically, inshallah ta'ala. I think it's very underrated knowledge. Call me biased. I think it's tremendously underrated. And I'm really honored that you're all here and I'm able to share it with all of you. And I pray that Allah blesses our journey together. This is our first of 10 lectures. And I do want you to revisit these slides, please. I want you to watch the recording again, at least one time if you can, please. We have two, even instead of like next week having class, you just rewatch again this lecture and just review and just lock in, this frame that we're talking about, this new paradigm, because we're going to come back in 2 weeks and get to work. We're going to go through 2 constitutions. We're going to do our Senecum album, which I named earlier, the wound of chaos, or the lack of control, or too much control. There's something about control with our Senecum, and a lot of fear around it, being either controlled or not being enough stability. Something about that, arsenicum. Either way, I need to control myself in my space. And then Calcarea carbonicum, another very interesting remedy. So I look forward to sharing them with you, inshallah ta'ala, in 2 weeks. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. See you inshallah in 2 weeks. Amen.